Okay, we can probably go ahead and get started. I'll let people in as they start, if any trickle in later. Before I turn it over to Sadie, I do have a couple little housekeeping things to say. So first off, hello, we're so glad you all are here. If anyone doesn't know me, my name is Jillian Robitis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of American Ice Theater of New Hampshire. I also skate on AIT Boston. So I'm here, Kate and Garrett were both busy tonight, so I was super excited when they asked me just to host and super excited to see Sadie's presentation. The other thing to know is just know that we are recording this because AIT shares it to anyone that can't make it live afterwards. So just be aware that it is being recorded. And then the other announcement is to let everyone know that signups for the adult skateaway, which is the AIT's adult focus skating event in Austin, Texas, just opened. So this year's skateaway is going to be in Austin from September 15th through 17th. And until August 1st, you can get a discounted early bird registration rate if you sign up before August 1st. So wanted to let everybody know that that was happening. You can sign up on americanictheater.org's homepage. You'll see the links there. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sadie Pressman. So Sadie Pressman, they, them, is teaching their class tonight on Investigative Improv, improvisation through the lens of research. Sadie is a professional figure skater, choreographer, and performer. They have performed with Disney on Ice, touring across the world. They are graduates of both AIT's Master Choreography Techniques and the AIT Mentorship Program, with their thesis studying the connections between improv movement and daily life. We're super excited. I know we're all super excited to see everything Sadie has to share. So take it away, Sadie.
Thank you for the intro, Julian. Hello, everyone. So I know we are being recorded, but if anyone feels comfortable sharing their screen, I'm always happy to see the faces of the people I'm working with, especially because today we are going to be doing some body movement. So I do hope maybe you're in a space where you can move around some. You don't need a lot of space. I'm in my room and it's kind of small, but we can work with it. So let me oh yes, and so also with the camera thing, let me just get into my housekeeping stuff too, because I have some, but I want to figure out how I can share my screen now, but not, I guess, hang on, what I'm going to need to do is, oh, actually, no one's seeing my screen right now, are they? No. Do you see my screen, Jillian? No, I see a nod, no. Okay. So here's a little intro. Jillian covered it mostly. My name is Sadie. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share my practice with you. If you came to the skating festival, contemporary skating festival in Boston, you know that I was very stressed out about not having my presentation memorized, and that I was using note cards. And luckily today, you have no idea if I'm reading this from my screen or not. And also my notes on my desk. So some of my own housekeeping for us today is that if you need to move around, we have like an hour and a half, 8:30, 9:30, 10. We have some time today. So if you need to move around, stretch or whatever, feel free to. I'm not bothered by that. And just do what you need to do to keep whatever you need to do to keep your attention here, and be present. And with that, I also ask that you are aware of your emotions and do self-care if needed. So we are going to be doing some improv. We'll be doing some intention setting and then some observations of our movement. And I want you to take care of yourself in whatever way you need to do during this process. I'm sure if anything comes up, feel free to message either myself or Jillian privately. And yeah, just do what you need to take care of yourself. I would like for you to have a pen and paper with you. As much as taking notes on our phones or computers can be helpful, writing things down. I can't tell you the exact science, but I know because I've been told so many times, it creates different pathways in your brain and connectivity. So with what we're trying to do today it's very helpful to be able to physically write down your intention and then your observation. And lastly, as mentioned, just have a little bit of space to move around. And so with that, I also just want to let you know the philosophy of this class, that at least what I've come to understand through studying improv is that the practice of improvisation is not moving your body entirely on a whim. It is a study fueled by curiosity, and curiosity is the basis for improvisation and an improvised life. Throughout the class, I'll get into more of what that means. And I want you to know that today, my objective is to teach you to develop your own study of the present moment and to become aware and curious about movement and emotional needs. And so with that, we're going to do things a little differently than how it was done in Boston. And we're just going to get right into the first exercise. So first, also, let's set up our notebooks. So if you have a pen and paper available, I would really just love for you to write down intention, observation, intention, observation, intention, observation. Do that so there are 3 different little couplets with some space in between, so that after you set your, or you've got your intention here, you can write it, and then there is room to make an observation. Just write this down in your notebook and have it. So I can't see everyone, but if you could all give me like a thumbs up reaction when you've got your notebook set up, then I'll know we are ready to begin. I see 1, 2, great. Okay, and I also see that someone is currently on the road. So of course, if you are driving or doing any other activities, please don't participate. But certainly if you can, do. So before we begin to move, let's take a moment to do a body scan. Close your eyes if you can. Take a deep breath. Feel the awareness at the crown of your head. Breathe into it as you feel the sensations begin to drop from your skull down to the backs of your eyes. Noticing the breath come in through your nose. Maybe a little, it's warmer on the way out through your mouth. Let your jaw relax. Let your tongue be loose in your mouth. Feel your awareness trickle down your throat, cascade over the shoulders. Let it pool in your chest and maybe warm the heart area. Take notice of anywhere where you have tension. Feel the awareness and the energy and aliveness of your body move down through your arms, extending like a vine into every finger. Breathe in, bring the awareness back up to your chest and let it start to fill your belly. Feel your whole belly, relax it, let it take up space as you inhale, and then pull your belly button to your spine on your exhale. Feel your awareness in both sides of your hips, dropping down through your tailbone, between your legs, going down your thighs, into your knees, and then follow it as it flows down the backs of your legs, the front of your shins, and then finally pools in your feet. So with that, take note of how you're feeling today. If you're low energy, high energy, this movement practice is yours. It's not performative. It's not anything you don't want it to be, really. So if you have like a little ache, let that inform your movement. Maybe don't push yourself through something that hurts. Let that be a roadblock, because roadblocks can actually be really good for creativity to direct us in other areas or show us other ways to move. So we'll start the exercise. It's quite simple. we're going to write an observation and then we will improvise. Typically, I don't use a time limit for how long I improvise when I do this practice on my own, but for the purpose of today's class, let's go for like 1 minute and 30 seconds. If everyone's still jamming, we'll go to 2. I don't know about you all, but we can certainly do this practice off ice, but as a native mover on ice, I usually feel really uncomfortable moving off the ice. So with that, if anyone feels similarly, like just be aware of it. And if you're doing skating movements on the floor, that's fine. Like whatever movement discipline or practice you come to with this, all is good, nothing is wrong. So then we'll improv for like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and then we will write an observation. So with that, make an intention for yourself, what you'd like to explore either in your movement or your emotional state, or maybe a story you'd like to tell, anything. It could be a word, it could be a short sentence. And let's start with there and just give me like a thumbs up on your screen or in the reaction when you're ready. I'm gonna practice mine as well. Okay, thumbs up, I see them, we good. Okay, so let me set a little timer too. And I'm gonna mute myself because the timer noise is really annoying and I don't want anyone to be bothered by it, but I'll come and let you know when we're done. So with that, if you want to go ahead and stand up, adjust your screen if you'd like, or stand out of the screen. Hi Erica, I see you're just joining. Feel free to just write down in a notebook real quick an intention, and then yeah, just write an intention, 1 word, a sentence. It can be anything, and then after we improv for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, we'll make an observation. Okay, so with that, for everyone who's ready, I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to do 1 minute and 30 seconds, and if everyone's jamming, we'll keep going for a bit, but if not, that's it. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm glad I muted it. That sound was jarring. So take a moment now, come out of your improv. Just stop where you are and take a seat and take a moment to write your observation. Just reflecting on how your movement was. Okay. Observation can be a word, a sentence or two. Doesn't need to be a paragraph, certainly not an essay. And then when everyone's done, just give me a little thumbs up. Cool. We're doing it. Okay. So we're just gonna let that sit for a minute. And now I'm going to speak a little bit about the history of this class. Not so much the class, well, yes, the class, but also where this structure came from and the way that I approach improv and the structure that I like to use when improvising on the ice, and why. So last year during a mentorship with Kate and Garrett, I dedicated 5 months to researching and writing my thesis on understanding how the practice of improvised skating influenced my daily life. And while there are many approaches to improv skating, I chose to do so through the lens of research. And I used this lens to evolve my movement with intentional, objective curiosity about my state of being on the ice. I had a really amazing opportunity of being able to go to the Contemporary Skating Festival and teach this structure, and share what I've been up to in terms of like researching improv. And many of the participants of that class assisted my research by sharing with me their worksheets that we used. And so I'm really excited today to share some of those materials with you a little later on in the class towards the end. So the practice we just did is part of a 3-part improv practice structure. So basically I would 3 times write an intention, improvise, write an observation. Improv 1, improv 2, write an intention, improv, write my observation. And then the last one, write an intention, improvise, and write an observation. And so collectively, I did this practice once a day for 5 days. And as part of my research, I developed this 5-day improv challenge. And it was a practice specifically using this structure that allowed me to research my mind, body, and movement. Some of the benefits that I experienced from this practice were that I was able to reach my flow state more consistently and build confidence in my movement. So to begin my research overall, I wanted to define the word improvisation. And if you Google search, what is the definition of improvisation? The Merriam-Webster dictionary will tell us that improvisation means to compose, recite, play, or sing extemporaneously. And that is essentially to say that movement is done without preparation. Throughout my research, I came to understand that the practice of improvisation does not, in fact, mean moving your body entirely on a whim. It is a practice, or in this case, a study of movement driven by intentional curiosity. So in addition to your individual approaches to improv, I would like you to add this new definition to improv and use it for the remainder of this class. And I want to make a very important note that not all improv is interesting or cool to look at. It is your internal experience that matters the most. So with this new lens, let's like put on little scientist researcher hats and pretend we're doing an experiment, because we basically are. And I would like to repeat now, this will be our second improv. And I would like you to write a new intention, and then we'll improvise, and then we'll make an observation. And I'll have a question for you afterwards too. Okay, so take a moment, think of your second intention with the lens of research in mind, and we'll go from there. And when you're ready, just give me a thumbs up. I'm gonna see if I can't change this alarm sound. That was really bad too. You might have heard that. Chimes, that's bad, that's bad. Okay, I don't like any of these. But just give me a thumbs up on the screen or in your chat box when you're ready. I see many. Okay. Great. So let's get into also just real quick input. Did a minute and 30 seconds feel good? Did you want more time? It's good. Okay. Because I know it can be difficult, like, oh, I've run out of ideas or like cool movements to do. Sit with it. Like push yourself to just explore what that feels like then. Like, oh, what does it feel like to feel like I'm bored and done and want to check out and move on? Because certainly that may happen. It happened to me in my own practice sometimes where I was like, huh, that intention was way too big to handle right now. So just try and sit with it. Push yourself a bit there. There we'll push ourselves, not if something like physically hurts. Okay, I'm gonna mute and then start, and I'll let you know when the time is up. Okay, that's time. Okay. So now I would really love your participation in sharing with me, not necessarily your observation from the first or second one, but looking at both of them as a whole, what was your experience, if you had any, from how you approached the practice on your second improv after learning about how to approach from research, as opposed to how you may have normally approached improv in the first exercise? Does that question make sense? Would anyone like to share their general observation of that?
I felt like I was less judgmental about what movements I was doing. I went in saying, I don't want to be thinking, I don't want to be observing while I'm doing. I want to just be doing. and then noticing that I was doing a lot of mental note taking, but that it was less judgmental mental note taking than in the first.
Amazing. Anyone else?
Yeah, like sort of along the same vein. I feel like in my improv, I tend to go to a very like energetic place and have a lot of like very large movements or fast movements. And I felt like approaching it with as just research almost gave me permission to just be very small and internal. And so much of our improv work is internal, but this was like extra permission to be like, these movements do not need to be for anyone else. It can just be like how I'm feeling and not even a large outside movement attached to it.
I love that. Next. I would really love to hear from all of you if you're willing to.
I think the biggest thing for me was really the internal experience thing you were talking about before. I feel like that made the biggest difference, because I think on the first time I was very much worried. I was like, what does this like even look like? Because I don't have a mirror like around me, so I'm like, I have no idea what I look like right now. And so I think the second time, like I was less focused on it, and I was more focused on like the internal experience. So I think like that like direct quote was definitely like the biggest like changing part about it.
Great. I'm glad to hear it helped. Anyone else?
I'm coming off, it turns out, a very difficult coaching experience. And so mostly I'm just listening, and I may not last out for super long, but I really appreciated the idea of research and thinking as not so much about like flowy expectation, which I often kind of associate improv often with like very flowy expectation. That didn't have to be the thing.
I like that, releasing that expectation too. Sometimes improv is disjointed and ugly, and if we're really working through some of our internal stuff, I don't know about y'all, but my internal stuff is not all flowy and cute and pretty and nice to look at. I'd say a lot of my internal world is disjointed and like, and with this practice too, we can alchemize that and approach ourselves differently to ask more of ourselves, in like, oh, different questions of maybe a story we're telling. Before I move on, I just want to check in. Anyone else who wanted to share? Amel or Kari? Okay, no worries. Would anyone like to share their intention or observation from either practice?
I can share mine. My intention on the second one was just to release muscle tension and just be very loose. And something I found was that if I could release tension in like my jaw specifically, that like for whatever reason, focusing there naturally unlocked me releasing tension in other parts of my bodies that like I couldn't necessarily do just isolated. Like if I was like, oh, I need to release my shoulders, that was hard. But if I could release my jaw, I was somehow able to release my shoulders. So I thought that was interesting.
That is a really great example of what I hope this practice brings to you, is like solving our own problems. So if just relaxing, if it's too hard to say like relax the shoulders, but we notice, oh, if we can relax the jaws, like then so much more can come. And that is how this translates into your everyday life, because you give yourself this small moment during, I'm assuming for most of you, like you love to figure skate, ice skate. So when you have this inquisitive practice that's both meditative and personal, and improvised, but guided in a way where we can ask a question detached from the result. We can learn these things about ourselves, and then through doing this practice, I don't know about you, I can't sit. I mean, I could, but it's harder for me to sit for 5 minutes in silence than it is for me to get up and go to the rink. So if I can go to the rink at least and do this practice for like the 10 minutes it may take, then I can take with me for the rest of the day a sense of mindfulness where I might stand in line at the grocery store and just be like, oh, how am I feeling right now? Or like, how's my body responding to the noise? Or what does my physical appearance project outwards? And it just gives you those little moments of curiosity that, from what I found, is like the basis for the improvisation. You know, we're all just kind of making it up as we go, but if there's intention, as humans, not only do we feel better when we have purpose and intention, but it gives us a deeper way to organize. My intention for the second improv we just did was, how can I explore myself as something other than a human being? And I almost surprised myself with that question coming up, and I was like, okay, interesting. Like, I don't think I ever would have thought that before. And so my observation was that through my movements, almost as if the story I told was that I was an organism of sorts from when Earth was inhabitable for humans, uninhabitable, uninhabitable, wasn't okay for humans to live yet. And I think that goes to show too, like, how can we ask ourselves to portray and explore different stories on the ice that we would have never thought of before? So that is one example too of how this can not only help us develop stories that we teach or stories that we portray, but movements and emotions that we want to portray and sensations we want to feel in our own body. So with that, let me check my notes and see where I was going with this. So back on the topic of the practice and how it was done, the parameters of this practice for me were that I would improvise 3 times, write an intention before, an observation afterwards. I would not use music, and I would video all of them, and there was no time limit. So sometimes I would improvise for 45 seconds and sometimes it was 3 minutes. No music, because music really influences the way we move, and we're not trying to move to someone else's intention, or let their words or thoughts or sounds even influence us. Certainly it can be a conscious choice if you are trying to develop choreography for a song, or if there's a song that helps you unlock a certain emotion. Let that be a choice that you make instead of, oh, I just always improvise to music. And I videoed all of them, and I would really encourage you to as well, should you decide to do this. I also highly encourage you to physically write down your intention and your observation. I have tried to do this the past few weeks without, and just thinking like, before I hit play, okay, what's my intention? And then while I'm improvising, it gets so lost, and then my observation isn't as meaningful either. So the actual practice of handwriting your intention not only makes it more solidified in your intention and what you plan to do when you go to skate, it also is part of the documentation. And since this practice is research-based, taking notes and filming is important for documentation. The video and written notes are essential for future reference because it enables you to make connections between your mental cues that evoke certain movements. So for example, I don't think I would have ever done what I did during my last improv if I hadn't set the intention of like exploring myself as something other than a human being. And if I ever want to recreate those movements, I want to ask myself the same question. So personally speaking, you could improv without video and without notes. And I would do this and maybe I would remember what I did, but I wouldn't remember the thought that evoked the movement behind it. And then moving forward without the information of what the intention was, the movement was seldom recreated, and even less so with the same movement quality. So it's not always important to recreate what you're doing, but when we're using improv as a tool for choreography, it can be very helpful. Even so, this practice can be used. You don't have to intend to choreograph anything from it. It can just be part of your daily practice, on and off the ice. I think, doing it on a computer screen, like sitting down off ice, we see that we don't need ice to do this. Although we ice skate, so like that's the point right now. I'm not a dancer, so if you do want to use it for choreo, it can be really helpful though when we start to tell stories and keep track of our movements. Typically with improv, the idea is to let it all go and leave it on the ice. And while this approach is inherently valuable, I find that creating a container with written notes and video allows me to enter my flow state with ease and research myself in a truly uninhibited state of being. I can then look back and analyze my movements, select movements I liked, revisit my state of mind, and overall process the experience in a deeper way. So some of my struggles before, as I mentioned, is I couldn't remember what I did in my improv. I wasn't actually skating in the present moment, and I didn't know how to integrate my improv experiences into my daily life. And sometimes improv is an intense spiritual or emotional experience, and it follows me off the ice. So with this structure, it allows me to feel empowered and intentional about my practice. And I hope it does a bit of the same for you going forwards. With that, I now wanted to just open up for questions. Does anyone have questions about what we've talked about today or anything? Yes, Anna?
I found it really interesting that you're finding the video also helping you to feel more uninhibited with it, because I noticed that when I started out thinking I was going to keep my video on, and then I immediately had a barrage of like negative thoughts about like myself and my body as soon as I saw myself in the video. And so I thought, okay, no, I can't do that. And I think even without this, even if I was only watching myself without the gaze of other people in this space, I think I would find that really challenging. So I'm kind of wondering if like judgmentalness sort of towards yourself like came up when you go back to look at it, or if not, just like how that has been for you.
Yeah, that's so valid. And let me tell you though, doing my little practice here, thinking, okay, great, yeah, this is getting recorded and going on YouTube, cool. Today that didn't really help my own case, but I can say now, and you're not alone in feeling this, when I taught in Boston, and even when I discussed the practice with people beforehand, they're like, I don't want to video myself, I don't feel comfortable, I judge myself when looking back. So I first want to say that when you do the practice and you video, you do not watch it back right away. You don't ever have to look at it. You write your note, you set your phone up. I usually like to put it horizontal at the boards, and usually with like the screen facing, just so I can make sure I get to see first my, like where on the ice I need to be. I'll see like, okay, blue line to blue line. And if anything, it really helped me build confidence in looking at what I'm doing and saying, oh, that's actually really cool. Even though the goal is not for this to be cool and exciting and interesting every time we improv, I think you would be surprised as a viewer. You kind of have to remove yourself. It's difficult with movement, because it feels so personal. Especially, I have no problem writing essays, sending my work in for feedback, write it, critique it. I love it. Like, give me all the feedback. My movement, someone's going to say something about what I'm doing with my body, whether they like it or not. That's personal. That is deeply personal. And it feels really personal. but it really helped me build confidence to look at what I was doing and help separate myself as not just the participant, but a viewer, kind of looking at yourself from the third person. And I mean, as skaters too, there is so much body dysmorphia involved, and like lots of shoulds about how we should look or move. You know, AIT's philosophy is humans first, skaters second. So just watch yourself as a human and be like, damn, that's cool. Or even ask yourself like, oh, that's what that movement looks like, or that's what that feeling looks like, or this is the feeling I get from watching myself do that movement. So long answer is long answer short, you're not alone. If anything, it might be uncomfortable the first few tries, but also this is documentation. And so you don't have to look at it right away. You might see something you really liked. You might hate 30 seconds of it, but be like, oh, those 5 seconds, loved that. I often do that. I'll pick those 5 seconds and then do it and improv off of there. And so then if you're creating a piece, you have a starting point. And we forget things. So you want to remember what your body did and what kind of got you there to do it. And it's kind of like archiving your skating as well. I don't really find that there is enough documentation of skating. You know, certainly like really big, large productions have video notes and books and count sheets and all of that. But for your own skating, like it's up to us to document what we can do. And certainly I'll look back and be like, oh, that was a really cool movement. Why don't I practice that anymore? It can be helpful for that too, to go back and think, oh, maybe I should practice that more when we get bored doing whatever it is we start to do. Does anyone else have a question, comment about what we've talked about so far? No? Okay. Let me double check. So for my final presentation, okay, so there's 2 more things I want to do with you. And one is show you videos from when I did this experiment. I just want to reiterate too, if you choose to do this practice for yourself, do 3 different improvs. I found that 3 was the best. 1 wasn't enough. 2 wasn't enough. 3 was just enough to be like, I know you want to check out, stay in it, just do the last one. 4, I would probably just be ready to move on. So I really encourage you to do 3 at a time. And I'm going to share my screen with you now. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. So this is the keynote from my final presentation with Kate and Garrett. With all of my video documentation of this practice that I did every day for 5 days, I found that doing it for 5 days, doing anything for 5 days will really get you in the habit of something, and make you think a little bit more deeply about it. As you can see, all of these were done on the ice except for the 4th day. I did not skate that day, and I actually kind of enjoyed that I didn't, even though it was supposed to be on the ice the whole time, because it just opened up to realistic life blocks of like, sometimes you just can't make it to the rink. But that doesn't mean you can't do your practice, your daily little check-in. So, and as we were able to achieve today, we can do the practice off ice as well. And it's still just as valuable. Personally, moving off ice is not my preferred movement medium. I would rather have my knife boots on to do whatever I would want. So let me start. I'm just going to show you a few. This is my first improv from the very first day. My intention was to begin with breath and follow the heart. So sometimes it was long. I think this is one of the longer ones. To Erica's point earlier, this one was pretty flowy. It just so happened to be. I find that when connecting with breath, when you make it long inhales and long exhales, that does produce more of that movement. Surely if you were to do a practice where your breath, if you chose to have quicker inhales and exhales, that could change the quality of your movement. My observation from this practice was that breathing helps to connect to the movement, and movement type is mostly flowy. And to be honest, watching this, there's 2 moves that I'm like, oh, I think that was really cool, and I would like to see that again elsewhere. But for the most part, like, I don't know that I would want to watch like a 4 or 5 minute program of all of that. And then moving on to the last one, can I see how long this one is? So this one, I'll probably just play a little bit of it. My intention for this last one was, how does my heart feel? And my observation from that was that it's too hard of a question to ask. It was my shortest improv and I lost focus. Another thing I want to point out is that, yes, some of these improvs are flowy. No, it doesn't always have to be that way. But using video, especially for me, helped to point out a lot of my go-to and like comfort movements. And another large benefit from practicing in this way helped me to develop my style and also see it reflected back of, oh, I tend to do this a lot, or I tend to do that a lot. It does help to have, you know, those eyes watching you. You know, sometimes that's a coach or it's yourself. I was mostly skating without a coach from like 2019 till just recently. So I went a long time without someone's eyes giving input. And I think who better than ourselves to give input on what we see. Certainly when it comes to like jumps and technique, we might not always see what someone with more experience might has. But when we're watching our own style, like we can be pretty good judges of saying like, okay, I see you doing that a lot. Looks cool. What else can you do? Do you want to do something else? If not, that's fine. We all have the choice. And one thing I've learned so much, it's repeated always about choreography, is that it's all about choices. And I think that ties into improv too, is we set an intention and then we have choices to make about whether or not we're following that intention or not. So moving on to day 2, let me show you the last one.
Can I just
Yes, go ahead.
say something? So when I didn't mean like flowy as a like critique of flowy,
Mhm.
you know, I just meant a certain kind of, it's hard for me to explain, like the kind of movement I associate with a certain kind of mushy yoga voice. In a way, like I love flowy stuff and I actually struggle a lot to be not always moving to whatever music is there. So I don't know, I just wanted to say a little more about what I actually meant by flowy, which was
Okay.
just, you know, some kind of stereotype. I don't know what to say. Okay, go ahead.
It's good. I hear you. I don't take it as a criticism. It's an
No, I
observation.
know.
And I think, I mean, that is a lot of what we see in skating too, is like flowy stuff. And sometimes we think improv is just like, woo.
Yes, thank you.
But I mean, for me, and this just kind of comes up, I think, whether or not that was mentioned, I do observe a lot of flowy movements in general in my skating. And it was cool to see that reflected back to make conscious decisions about what I want my style to be. So going to this last improv on the second day, my intention was, how can I toggle between being an active participant in joy versus being a passive participant or observer of joy? So I'm just going to stop it there to keep time and interest. My observation from this was that I experienced curiosity, wonder, flow, and joy. And one of the larger themes that I was working with that day, my intention from the second improv rather was to move through the feeling of joy in different body parts. And one thing I observed watching this over backwards was that what felt like joy in my body was the low, long, sustained movements. But as a viewer, what looked a little bit more like joy was like the quick, peppy things. So I just thought for myself, like that was a really great understanding of what feels joyful in my body might not look joyful for the viewer. And so taking that into choreography too, thinking about the choices we make about movement. Do we want to prioritize what feels good or what looks good? Not what looks good, but do I, for example, if I use this as an intention, do I want to prioritize the joyful feeling in my body and do what feels good versus having more emphasis put on the viewer being able to distinctly say, oh, that person is joyful because of their peppy, outbursty movements. So that was the second day. On the third day, my last improv, the intention was to move from the core. Like I literally told, I was like, And so I would also like to do a little experiment for myself and ask here if anyone thought that through the whole improv that the intention was sustained, or that it looked like the movement was always moving from the core. Does anyone else have would anyone agree that's what we saw, or make an observation that it was otherwise?
I would agree that I think the movement was from the core, especially while I was watching it, I was actually thinking about how creative it was that there were a lot of like turns and like twisting, because I feel like my immediate thought when you said your intention was to move from the core, I was thinking like a lot of like up and down three-dimensional kind of movement, and I wasn't expecting the turns. And so and I was watching it, I was like, oh, like that's so true. Like, yeah, it is absolutely moving from the core. So yeah.
Cool. Well, did anyone else start to speak? No? Okay. I appreciate that, because my observation afterwards, not watching the video, remember, we're just writing our observations after doing the movement. My observation afterwards was that my movement began in the core and it ended in my foot. But I love that as a viewer and as someone who didn't experience it in their own body, you saw what you saw, because it actually helped enlighten me in this moment of like, it takes a lot of core to move on one foot and to initiate all of those turns. You need a strong core for that. That's what I'm always telling my kids in 3 turns. You have to have a strong core. So that's just interesting. I'm kind of a nerd for this stuff, so I think that's cool. So some of this practice, it's getting us somewhere and it's not. A lot of it is just observation, no judgment, taking it in and just carrying on. The last, let me check the time and see if I want to do that one half hour. Okay, let me just share, was this from the 4th day? Yeah, so from the 4th day, that was the second improv. So this is an example of one of the days where I practiced off of the ice. My intention on this day was a little lengthy. I kind of had 2, that I wanted to explore the speed of movement, which is a metaphor for the speed at which things flow between us, coupled with the pauses we make to be completely present. Full disclosure too, this kind of had to do with feelings I was having with another person, and it was like the speed at which things were progressing with us, but also trying to show in my movements, when we tried to just pause and be in the present moment with one another. And so the movement I wanted to explore with that in mind was tempo. Okay, I'm just gonna end it there. My observation from this was that there were really big movements, repetition, and sometimes my eyes were closed. And on my third improv, my intention was to explore my future intention, juxtapose the sadness of my departure. So the intention that this person and I had going forward, while also feeling the sadness of like, yes, moving forward, but moving forward also means that there will be more distance between us. And my observation from my final improv was that I was thinking about connecting in the future and holding curiosity about the future connection. And that made the idea and the reality of leaving a little less sad. And I wanted to share those two together, improv 2 and improv 3, because I think it's a good example of how we can have a very like wordy or an emotional intention, and the outcome can be more physical observations and vice versa. So for example, in the final improv, I guess it was a little bit more like emotionally too, but basically our input and our output can be either emotion-based, thought-based, or it can be movement-based. And we will flow through this practice, exploring the mind, the body, and the soul. And I think the mind and the body kind of dictate the intention and the observation of, is my intention, mind-based, is it thought-based, or is my intention movement-based, body-based? And then during the improv, that's when the soul gets to take over and follow that intention. And then you make your observation kind of off of what the soul has told you. You can make your observation on movement-based things, what you notice from what your soul was experiencing, or from the thoughts you had about what you were going through as you were going through it. I don't really know what I believe sometimes, but I do think that there is something in us creating very uniquely and very specific and special to us. And with what we do, skating or any movement craft, it is such a beautiful way for expression. And I mean, this just kind of comes back to how, for me, this structure was so helpful in letting myself create in that most embodied state. Even at times where I was like, okay, I couldn't stay focused, I'm ready to check out. That's when you can notice, okay, that's where the ego is really playing in place right now. Like, we can't keep focused, we're judging the movements, and whatnot. Let me check back with my notes, the next thing. So would everyone be up for doing one more movement practice? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen real quick. So before we go and do the very last movement practice, I want to share with you. Do I want to share that afterwards? Okay, I lied. If y'all are cool with it, let's do 2. They're going to be much shorter. Let's go for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I'm going to ask you all to use the same intention. So if you would, please write your intention as very vertical, straight lines. I'm going to put it in the chat as well so you can see. So I would like you to write your intention to be very vertical, straight lines. And then when we do our movement, let's let that guide us. Okay, so I'm going to set a timer. We'll just do 30 seconds so that we can go through this in the next one and move on. That was a quick one. Stop wherever you are. And now please come back and make an observation of what that was like for you. And yeah, let's start with that. So the intention that I just gave you, very vertical, straight lines, was somebody's observation of their movements. This came from someone's worksheet at festival. So their observation was very vertical, straight lines. And their intention was, how does happy look? So would anyone like to share what that brings up for them? Was your intention of very vertical straight lines, did that produce happiness in any way? What was your observation in correlation to that? Does anyone like to share?
This did not produce happiness in me, both in that it felt like maybe too restrictive an intention, in that I feel like I already know what that looks like. And so I had, maybe if I had longer to work with it, I might have gotten somewhere more creative with it, but it felt very restrictive. And also that it immediately made me feel like that's not what my body wants right now. So I had this like very strong negative reaction to it that came up. So it's definitely interesting that that was not where that person started.
Anyone else?
I don't want to say that it produced like happiness in me, but I felt a lot more like content with it, because I kind of felt the opposite. I feel like it was nice to have like a very clear intention, and I felt like it was a really solid jumping off point. So I felt like I wasn't so much worried about like, oh no, how do I have to be creative, and what am I like, I feel like, what am I supposed to do? Like I felt like it was almost easier, and it felt more like objective. Like I felt like, okay, a line, like I can do lines, and then it felt easier to be more creative with it because I wasn't so focused on how like I had to do it, you know? I don't know, that's what I felt.
Anyone else?
I will just embarrassingly admit that I took it as an opportunity to think, keep working on your alignment. So I just really thought a lot about where were my shoulders and my core, and just stretching down. And also realizing I could do that and go get the glass of water I really wanted and still do the movement. So probably just having admitted that, I don't know, but it was a
Amazing.
little bit of an invitation to sort of stretch downward in ways I try to do better at.
Yeah, I like what you just said there of it's an invitation. It's an invitation. Any intention is an invitation to try something, to feel a certain way. I know for me, I felt very confined. And I think it is interesting looking at someone else's intention versus their observation, because sometimes we don't actually end up where we think we're going to, or again, the observer's observation isn't, how do I word this? It's kind of like my situation of where what was joyful for me didn't actually look joyful. So similarly for them, vertical straight lines might read that, but for us, we're like, I don't know exactly how you got from here to there. And in your case, Angel, I think it's a beautiful observation of like, oh, sometimes having like a bit more of a boundary can really make a more open, inviting space for creativity, or to see where you can't fall within the lines. So I would like to do another one really quick and look at an intention of quick, repetitive movements, a lot of lows, and out of control edges. It's a bit of a mouthful here. I just sent it to the little group chat too. So quick, repetitive movements, a lot of lows, out of control edge. I know we're not on skates, but let's see what that brings up for us today. Okay. And when you're ready, turn your screens off because I know no one wants this to be recorded. 30 seconds and then we'll come back. Okay, that's time. Okay. Would anyone like to share their observation of what that intention felt like? What it felt like, what it looked like?
I'm gonna be so for real. That one was not as fun as vertical lines. Did not enjoy that one as much. I think it like this exercise really just brings to light like I feel like what I need to work on, you know? Like that's like I feel like it's a really great educational tool in that way. That's kind of what I got from that. I'm like, oh girl, I gotta work on it. I gotta work on my stuff.
I mean, it reflects in that way, maybe your style. Maybe that's out of your normal style and your normal comfort range of movement. And that's fine. We just notice it and let that inform the next thing. Anyone else?
Well, so I think my immediate feeling was like that trying to do quick repetitive movements just was not where my body was feeling in terms of this, I don't know, time in the evening doing whatever. I'd like, that was not where I wanted to be, but trying to push through that. I did find the question of the, like, what does an out of control edge look like? Not when you're not on a skate, a really interesting question. And the answer that came to me was side planks. And what I often find challenging in yoga, the idea of like balancing on the side of my foot as a slightly uncomfortable, but like what is that, like finding that edge that you can go up to, but not, but still having enough control to be able to balance on it. Like that's an interesting question of like, what does it feel like to have edges of your body, not just of your skates?
I love that.
So this will be probably funny to Anna because we're skating partners and working on Death Spiral. And so I spent the whole time, so I'm the person working on the side planks in order to be able to do the Death Spiral. So and we're at this point of like almost but not quite at the like shoot out into the, you know, like still trying to like get the edge to go out. And like, when is it going to happen that I just, you know, wind up that way? So I thought a lot about movement of like that moment of going from the very controlled practice to like, all right, do the out of control thing. So I think we're a little on the similar page there.
Good to see that. Jillian, do you want to share?
Yeah, I thought that it was really interesting. One thing that I noticed in mine was just kind of jumping off of what Anna was saying about it being a little bit late and my body being like, I don't want to make fast, jerky movements. But then realizing how on the ice, I think I would have taken that in this like very big way, but that like given my energy levels, I was able to take it in a smaller way. Um, so it's just like finding, like making yourself do things that you don't necessarily want to be doing or aren't your go-tos, and like having that intention, like you're saying, behind it, and how much that does unlock, and how often we are just like doing the things that we kind of know how to do already. Yeah.
So thank you all for sharing. That intention, again, was someone's observation, and that person's intention was, how does panic look? So I think it's really interesting to sort of see, I'm not good at math, but like A plus B doesn't always equal C, or like you rearrange it and you get something else. And so that's an example of someone, and very well in your own practice, you can have a different intention every single time. There can be a common theme in your intention. There could not be a common theme, or they could be the same. So for example, from the notes I received from one person, their intention was the same every single time, and their intention was stretch. Their first observation was that it looked small, unsure, not stretchy. Also, so you know, I am just reading what their observation was, and some of this is just shorthand. So they're not always full sentences. Their second observation was much more exhausting, changing gaze, commit to movement. I really want to slide, but ice is shitty, feel confined, less judgment. And their last observation was gave up halfway through, frustrated by the ice quality or lack of it. I would also like to take the last few moments to share some other intentions and observations that I thought were really powerful and stood out from this whole experience. There were about 60 participants in the on ice class that I taught at Festival, and I got so many, I'd say maybe 50 papers or so back. And I'm so grateful for everyone who's willing to share their work with me, because it really helped me dive deeper and also give this class to you in the way that it is. Had I not had their info kind of, you know, pursuing my research, it would have looked a lot differently. One person's observation was that was fucking hard. Because let's be real, sometimes like whatever we're doing is hard. It can be hard to ask ourselves to go somewhere emotionally. It can be hard to be moving in a way that our body doesn't really feel like it wants to move, or whatever. Like sometimes, and sometimes life, that's just how it is. These things can be difficult. There was another intention. The intention was crossover exploration. Their observation was spontaneous discovery of what a crossover may look like that I had not thought of. Their second intention, or third, I'm not sure where it started, was 3-turn exploration. Well, that was their second. And the last one was toe pick balance exploration. So that's to show that these can be very movement based as well. Not just movement, but like skating skill based. You can choose to explore your stops, your turns, pivots, whatever parts of your blade, different parts of your body. Someone's observation was, let me make this bigger. It was harder than I thought without the music. Makes me want to look for more inspiration to develop conception of what is possible and interesting. This was probably my favorite. Another intention was to improv the feeling of being in love. And their observation was that is exactly what I needed today. I just melted when I read that. Another observation was became present in my individual space, did not feel the need to impress. Another observation was felt typical and tried to stop, but then realized that is okay. So that goes to show too, even if we do these movements where we're like, oh, I do this all the time, that's fine, because this is your improv and this is your own exploration of your own style. And if you don't give yourself the opportunity to do the same thing over and over, how would you know that that's what you do over and over? Quite simply. And lastly, I wanted to share some general observations. So this is kind of the a little look at the worksheet that I used every single day. It had the practice day and then my notes maybe about what I did that day. So this note was, I didn't warm up, I didn't skate oh wait, that was the day I didn't skate. Let me pick a day I skated. Did I have any notes on a day I skated? Okay, so on a day I skated, I just noted before my practice that it was a public session. I didn't jump or spin yet. I just did like freestyle, improv, and exercises. And I was also curious, what's the difference between freestyle and improv? So I let myself make a little note if I wanted to about the day. And then I would do my first improv, second improv, third improv, and then sometimes it was at the top or bottom. Basically, there was just always a place for a note. And so when I did this practice in Boston, some people, these are now notes that some people left that I wanted to share with you as well. Not all improv is cool or beautiful, it's yours. Just do what your body wants, let it take over, let it speak, and own your movement. You will be fine. I really want to hold myself accountable and actually go back and watch these videos. I tend to avoid watching myself skate and criticize myself harshly when I do watch. Move through the stuckness. Not all improv looks cool. How do you express versus how do you feel? I need to stop comparing myself to others so much and so hard. So that's everything I wanted to go through today, just in the nick of time too. So I really, really appreciate everyone's participation and attention. It really means a lot. And I hope that you took something away from this class. If you have any questions at all, let me put my email in the chat if you ever want to email me, if you want to stay in touch, if you want support doing your own 5-day improv challenge. I do offer that. I've said a lot during this. I can provide support. I would love to check in with you, watch your videos, read your papers, help you through this, notice any stuck points. Going back and using different observations or intention can also help to get to the root of maybe a movement or a feeling you're trying to express. And I think that was everything. So does anyone have any final questions, remarks, comments?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I did have one question though. Where do you find like the inspiration for your intentions came from mostly? Because I feel like your intentions are like so creative and deep, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I don't even know. So where do you feel like that came from?
Thank you. I want to see if I can find the first page because it's practice. All of my intentions on the first day were begin with breath, follow the heart, be aware of eyes, focus, direction, and orientation. And how does my heart feel? And how does my heart feel was not an option that day. It was too big. So a lot of it is practice, trial and error, putting your intentions out, seeing how it sticks, seeing what kind of movement it evokes. And then you can start to you can start to ask more of yourself in that way of, oh, I wanna move differently. What do I need to ask myself to move differently? Do I have an emotion to express that I want to express differently? Do I want to explore a certain kind of movement? That's a really good place to start, and practice doing this every day. If you can, on or off the ice. Trust me when I say my little intention of, how can I move as if like I'm not a human being? I thought that was so cool too. And I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? So they don't always start like this. I really do think practice helps. Asking yourself, what does consistency look like on a consistent basis? And just showing up for yourself in the way that you can. I also journal. If you journal throughout the day, maybe start your day with a journal, go to the ice rink, think about it. Certainly the start of a new relationship helped on one of those days where it was like, oh, I'm thinking a lot about, this person and this, whatever is going on over there. Some days it was, I'm just looking back on some of the days now. Some days it was a feeling of joy or starting in the core. So I would just encourage you to get into the swing of it, and you can watch yourself evolve. But also, if you're interested, I have all of these intentions and observations typed up and compiled, and I would like to make a list of intentions that people can use for their practice. So if you're interested in that too, I can send you a whole list of intentions if you'd like to work with them as well. Because it can be a great starting point as well, and just as valuable as coming up with your own.
That would be awesome. That is super cool. And thank you so much again. This was wonderful. I love how passionate you are about it. It just comes out. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Why don't you, if you're comfortable with it, shoot me a private message or put your email in the chat here, and I'll reach out to you and we can stay in touch, and I'll share some of those with you. Yeah. I do think this is amazing. I thank you all again. I think it's incredible I'm just nerding out about that. It's really cool to have people that are interested and passionate as well and love skating and moving. Thank you, Angel. I just copied and saved it. Oh, thanks, Anna. I just read your note in the chat too. I'm glad to hear that. Also, plug for Anna, go listen to their podcast, The Future of Figure Skating. Really cool stuff happening over there. I've listened to almost every episode now.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sadie. I was able to be at festival and take Sadie's class on the ice, and so this was really wonderful for me to get to see it like continue to grow and take it from a different lens. And thank you everybody for being here, and thank you for all your thoughtful feedback and participation. There are 2 more classes in this like virtual summer series. So the next one is going to be on Tuesday, August 8th. With yoga practitioner Preeti Stoltman. I hope I said their name correctly, so I'm sorry if I did not. Teaching Hatha Flow Yoga practice for the root chakra. And then the final summer class is going to be on Tuesday, August 29th, with Garrett Kling and Kate McSwain teaching foundational skating skills and 6 ways of the spine. So we hope that we'll see you all back for that. But yeah, thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Sadie.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it more than you know, really. Thank you.
Thank you.